Hello, I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and welcome to Surviving Bad, where we explore Iowa's stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. While many communities struggle under the pressure of high-risk behaviors, Scott County thrives with innovative programs and a strong level of community engagement. It's not that there aren't problems, but often it's better to focus on solutions. Today we're joined by Kennen, Prevention Coordinator with Unity Point Health, to talk about the Center for Alcohol and Drug Services and how they approach solutions in their community. Kennen, welcome to the show. Please start out by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got here today.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm glad to have the opportunity to utilize this platform to be able to share about some of the services and things that we're doing. Again, as you stated, my name is Kennen, Prevention Specialist, which that title means absolutely nothing to a lot of different people out there. But how I got into the field, I like to think I had that question asked to me over 1,000 times, and I think each time I give a different answer, but pretty much I believe the field chose me. You know, when I was younger, we'll just say that the community I grew up in, the neighborhood, there was a lot of people that was close to me that were impacted by substance use, misuse, and abuse. And so when seeing that happen, something I had two choices, either wanted to do something about it or be a part of the problem. And, you know, from here in Scott County, I don't know if you're familiar, there used to be a school as I was going to college called Mary Crest University. It's no longer here, but they had a program, the substance abuse program. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I know I was tired of seeing the pain, people getting hurt in the community, and here I am 20 years plus. I went there with the school, decided that's the field I wanted to go into. And like I said, trying to make a difference and impact, just trying to leave the world better than it was the day before. So, and be involved with something bigger than myself. So I've been here for 20 years plus, but I haven't always been in prevention. I started out working in the residential adolescent programming for substance abuse, adult residential halfway house detox unit, but prevention is where I landed, and I'm happy to be here. So,
well, that's pretty cool. You know, a lot of people don't realize there's a pretty large continuum of services that addresses the help that people need in substance use disorder and mental health. Or like you said, where you start out residential stuff to prevention stuff, and we like to sometimes talk about prevention in sort of, well, let's take a look like a forest fire. You know, you got problems, you got to put water on like a forest fire. But right. You also have to worry about taking fuel out of the fire. And in a way, prevention does that. It takes the fuel away from some of these social maladies. Now, I think that the Quad Cities has always been fascinating because not only being a border town, there's a lot of socioeconomic diversity. I don't know about ethnic diversity. You would be an expert on that. But it really is a microcosm of America. So you have a large spectrum of needs and services. And you have to really drill down to find out what the problems are and how you should approach them, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So many things I want to say right now from with that dialogue that you just provided, but I don't even know if we have enough time. First of all, you're right. The Scott County, pretty large. I want to say over 173,000 to be correct. So in suburbs, rural farmland, a very diverse group of individuals. And when I say diverse, I'm talking about economic, rural suburbs, African-American, Latino. But when you talk about what does that mean as far as diverse, we did a needs assessment to engage services like community readiness. And what that means is for people to see where they are at as far as us addressing certain issues as it relates to substance, particular substance. It could be tobacco, alcohol, whatever the case may be. And I can tell you one way I would describe a Scott County or Scott counties are they care. They care. From the assessment, we saw that a lot of people wanted to be involved. May not have had all the information and thought certain things were a higher priority as far as addressing, but they all wanted some form of involvement as far as being really involved to passive involvement as addressing the issue. So that's how I would describe Scott County. Also, when you describe your prevention with the analogy used was the fire. Are you familiar with the river story?
No.
Okay, for those out there in TV land, we'll say, when I think of the river story, when people talk about prevention, my way of describing it is on that continuum that you spoke about, is that, and I'm gonna try to give you the short version, is that there's all these people in this community falling into this river. And as they're falling into the river, we're sitting there and we're pulling them out, resuscitating them, just pulling them out. And this river's flowing downstream. And as we're pulling them out, guess what? More people are just falling in, continually to fall in, pulling them out. So we're sitting there in the community, this village, pulling people out as more people are coming downstream. And then all of a sudden, one guy leaves, and I'm like, hey, where are you going? And he says, I'm going upstream to see why these individuals keep falling in. Well, that's prevention. He goes upstream, he sees that there's a dam that's broken, a bridge, it's rotten, it's old. It's not the individuals in that community, it's some of the resources or things that are lack of resources. And so as he runs up there and he figures out, well, let's see what the problem is instead of addressing everybody over there, putting all of our resources there. That's what prevention does. And that's where we're at on the continuum. Make no mistakes about it. Treatment, everything's equally important. We need it all. But prevention, that's where we are. We're there at the other end of the spectrum, trying to stop them from falling into the river. If that makes sense.
That's a great way to look at it. We're going to take a short break on that note, and when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Kennen. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this.
Today, more than ever, you need fast, reliable internet. At Mediacom, we want you to know you can count on us. Our fiber-powered 100% gigabit technology network was built for the future. We have enormous capacity and power and 99.99% network reliability. So even though these are uncertain times, we're prepared, and you can be certain we'll keep your world connected. While a lot is changing in our world, at Mediacom, our focus remains the same, making sure you have the fastest, most reliable connection possible. During this critical time, we know your needs are changing. You may be working or learning from home, relying on telemedicine, or finding new ways to keep everyone entertained. If you need more speed, call or go online, and Mediacom will double your speed immediately for as low as $10 more a month for 1 year.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and we're talking with Kennen Neal, Prevention Coordinator with Unity Point Health, about the ways his community approaches substance use disorder as well as healthy choices. Kennen, share some of the priorities and programs that are so important to what you're doing there.
Well, I know, for example, we look at a lot of data and a lot of trends, and I want to make sure I get this right. I know, opioid, addressing the opioid overdose or epidemic, we would say, through our community. And I know through Scott County, and I want to make sure I get the data correct. I think it was year 2014. I don't know if this was from the Iowa Youth Survey, but I did read through 2014, 2018, Scott County, we had one of the largest fatalities when it came to opioid-related deaths, So with that being said, we have a grant here, like I said, funded through the Iowa Department of Public Health, and it's called SIPTO. Some people say SIPTO, which stands for Strategic Initiative to Prevention Overdose. That's a lot of words right there. We have a lot of acronyms, so forgive me, I'll make sure I give the full spelling of what they mean. I think it's important to give those acronyms as well because you hear about them through the community, but you need to know what they mean. And we have so many strategies, but one that I'm very fond of, personally, I love it, is that we do trainings, and these trainings are geared to helping those individuals that are truly heroes in the community. First responders, EMT, law enforcement, and when I say first responder, security, or anybody who may be in a situation where they're first on the scene to experience somebody who may be dealing with an opioid issue, or issue would be an overdose. So we have these trainings, and I tell you, they've been great so far. I've had the honor to participate and deliver these trainings, and we've done great with them. So that's just one of the initiatives under that particular grant that is a very high priority. Now, when you ask that question, high priority, those are priorities, but each one of our grants, I believe we have 4 I may be leaving one out, 5 grants under this building, and everything's equally as important. You know, they all are important. I know sometimes people rate the severity and we talk about human life, but they're all equally as important. But yeah, I do love that one, especially when it addresses those heroes and individuals that are on the, it's so important that they take care of themselves. And one part of that particular grant, we do some self-care, you know. They're out there addressing issues, helping individuals, putting themselves on the line. We do a trauma-informed training with them as well for first responders. It's called trauma-informed, I want to believe, for people on the front line. Imagine that, all the individuals dealing with trauma that you know, or you may experience yourself personally, and these guys have a job, you know, crisis response, people to show up and witness and see trauma. So when we have an opportunity to put more tools in their toolbox and show that we care and help them fulfill their job and to be healthy, I love that part of it personally. But like I said, there's so many different avenues to that particular grant. I couldn't begin to cover them all. So another one, the grant that comes to mind would be, under our IPN, we have the SAFE grant. Now, SAFE isn't spelled S-A-F-E, it's S-A-A-F. And that's our strong, it's an acronym for Strong African American Families. Now, yes, love the grant. I think it's a great time to work with populations, those disparate populations, those populations that are sometimes forgotten about, if you want to be real. And so I love that particular grant. And the unique thing about that grant, we get to work with the youth as well as the caregiver. I'm not going to say the parent, because you know a lot of our families sometimes don't have the parent there, and that's the language they use, the caregiver, the individual, the adult in the household that's taking on that role, that responsibility. And I tell you, there's nothing about that grant that's so fabulous, because you get to see the caregiver and the youth come together, eat dinner, we have lunch, we break off, we work on certain life skills, give a better understanding, they regroup. They have not homework assignments, but assignments, they go home, they put them in the plate, and they come back. And when you can watch the growth take place in front of you and the sharing and the dialogue, I love that particular program. So, and that's a program that we offer. Like, and I should mention, a lot of our, like I said, these are things that are available throughout Scott County, you know, that we have available. So, and that's particularly for intermediate.
You know, this is interesting because we had a guest on our show a while back, Pastor Michael Hurst from Des Moines, and he pointed out something really important when they were trying to build families together in some of the economically distressed communities in Des Moines. He said that, you know, it's not the single parenting that's the biggest problem. It's not like we shouldn't stigmatize a single parent. We're trying to build stronger families. It's that a single parent doesn't have enough resources as a two-parent family. So and you're talking about that. You're talking about providing resources which fills that need from a parent that may have a little extra work to do to keep that family strong and together. And that's a really great idea.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right. And some of these, and I tell you, we talk about resources for anybody. That's the great thing, because the prevention of resources are information dissemination, which is basically a one way. That could be anything from just handing out flyers, letting them know this program or what's happening. Then we have our two-way. That's our evidence-based programs that we have with community agencies within the school. And that's that dialogue, that two-way, but it's evidence-based. It has to study. It works, you know, so we have those programs. We have our environmental strategies. You may see some of our commercials. When I say our commercials, like I said, these are funded through the Iowa Department of Public Health. One of the biggest, we call it environmental strategy, and reach the masses. And we use it through a media campaign. One particular one we have right now is called See the Person, Not the Addiction. And it's about destigmatizing. And I hear those commercials, I see the radio thing. When I say the commercial, I'm talking about social media or that billboard, and know that we have a part to play with sharing that information. And that's what it's about. Somebody look at that. People are dealing with substance misuse. People are dealing with biases and prejudices and stuff. And I just think that information sharing is so important, you know.
That's a great point. So we're going to take a short break, and then when you come back, we'll continue our conversation with Kennen. See you after the break.
Today, more than ever, you need fast, reliable internet. At Mediacom, we want you to know you can count on us. Our fiber-powered 100% gigabit technology network was built for the future. We have enormous capacity and power and 99.99% network reliability. So even though these are uncertain times, we're prepared, and you can be certain we'll keep your world connected. While a lot is changing in our world, at Mediacom, our focus remains the same, making sure you have the fastest, most reliable connection possible. During this critical time, we know your needs are changing. You may be working or learning from home, relying on telemedicine, or finding new ways to keep everyone entertained. If you need more speed, call or go online, and Mediacom will double your speed immediately for as low as $10 more a month for 1 year.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and we're talking with prevention specialist Kennen Neal, a leader in his community that understands the needs of his community. You know, speaking of those needs, Kennen, you were telling me about an escape the vape room, which sounds fascinating. Tell us more about that.
Well, first of all, disclaimer, I just want people to know it has nothing to do with the movie Escape Room, but it is an escape room, and I also think it's important to add that due to trauma informed that the escape rooms, you can't actually get out of them. We don't actually lock them, but it holds to the idea of escape room. Now, Mr. Peter, have you ever been to an escape room?
No, only seen things on TV about them.
Well, here's the thing about escape room. Let me set it up for you for the escape room. I've been to a few of them. Some would even call me a guru, or at least I would call myself when it comes to escape room. But it involves working together, problem solving, assessing the situation, implementing a plan, and the sharing of information, sort of like the SPIF process. And I know you're probably familiar with that. And so this is an opportunity for the escape. We saw this opportunity because we've had people contact us from the schools, organizations. Do you have any information on vaping? And we said, well, let's come up with a fun way. Now, when I say we, the team here as staff, and I said, well, we have another grant here through our Scott County, and it's about sharing and services. And we're like, well, we can share information about vaping, but let's do something where the adults can come as parents. And that this Escape the Vape Room we've had is set up here locally at our site, I remind you. And we've had professionals come in from law enforcement, which I have to tell you a funny story about that, because this room is a mock room of a characters, we'll call him Joe, and he's trying to escape the vape and get the services that he needs and get the help. This vape room has a time limit, like most vape rooms, where you have to solve the puzzle, escape. And the idea is to help Joe escape the vape and get to the next room, get out of that room. And when you get out of that room, you get to walk into a room with a bunch of prevention services, and they will be there to help you and guide you. And I can tell you what, we've had nurses come in through here, nurse practitioners, law enforcement who basically ransacked the whole room. I think that's part of their job thing there. We've had staff, but we've had parents come through that had concern, and they've learned and they work together, and it's a fun experience, what we call healthy fun, but at the same time, they learn about the dangers, and it educated the parents on certain things around vaping that they didn't know. We also had a chance it educates on the marketing scheme, as far as like people say, well, I had so many teens or young adults interested in vaping. What's the big thing? What's their marketing? And we talked to them about, for example, OMG. What does that stand for when you hear that term, OMG?
Oh my God.
Oh my God, exactly. That's the first thing that comes to mind. But we talk about the social world, the social media world. Did you know there's actually a vape juice out there that says it's called OMG, and it stands for orange, mango, and guava? So when you hear that, you see the familiar. Now, what does that do? It presents to young adults that, hey, this is safe. I'm familiar with that, OMG. We use that every day. Certain vape devices, electronic, such as the Juul, one of the most popular ones. When I think of a Juul, even though it's spelled different, I think of something that's precious, that hold dear to me, close, of value. So we know this is opportunity just to educate, the youth and adults on some of the marketing schemes. We also educate them on the dangers of vaping. Many people think it's marketed as a cessation product. And I'm not saying in some cases that some people may have quit traditional cigarettes. But the study shows, if you do the research, that most people who were smoking traditional cigarettes that tried to use electronic cigarettes actually are becoming dual users. So what does that tell you? There's a lot of information out there still. So those are just some of the interesting facts that we share with people as they go through the room. And we don't share it, they find these foods and they get this information as they're solving the puzzle. So like I said, it's fun, but it's also enlightening. And I think the best record I want to say went to, well, I want to make sure, I'll keep this organization out of it. But actually, Boys and Girls Club came through too, or Big Brothers, Big Sisters. They did marvelous. So it's just an opportunity. Like I said, you don't have to be somebody vape. You may just want to learn more information about it.
And we worry about vaping because we're hearing that vapes are being used for marijuana products.
Yep. Also known as road hit. And here's the thing, a lot of people don't know through those devices that, well, first of all, they're doing it to remain anonymous. It creates more of a scarring through the tissue when they smoke it that way through the electronic cigarettes, which could cause damage. There's still so much out there to know with it. But yeah, that is something that we're seeing. When I say we're seeing, that's something that young adults, they feel comfortable. I keep my ears to the concrete of sharing information. When you're talking, having dialogue, and they're sharing, but this is what I've heard that my friend said, or this is what's out there. So it's a lot of information.
Well, that's an interesting point, and thank you for sharing all this stuff. We're going to take a short break and invite you back to share some final comments and advice. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this.
Today, more than ever, you need fast, reliable internet. At Mediacom, we want you to know you can count on us. Our fiber-powered 100% gigabit technology network was built for the future. We have enormous capacity and power and 99.99% network reliability. So even though these are uncertain times, we're prepared, and you can be certain we'll keep your world connected. Every second, 127 new devices connect to the internet. You can feel it happening, our digital world expanding with every breath. We're entering a whole new era of connectivity, and Mediacom will be ready to power it with one of the nation's first 10G platforms. We'll be bringing you more speed, more capacity, more security, and the power to do more than you ever dreamed possible.
Welcome back. Today on Surviving Bad, we're talking about substance use disorder prevention services and community health improvement in Scott County, Iowa. Prevention specialists have a lot of experience, especially our guest today, Kennen. Let's see what advice he can offer us. Now, Kennen, you're also a dad, a parent. You've lived this whole life continuum already to some extent.
Right.
But you really do focus on kids. How does having kids and caring for kids challenge you to understand the needs of a community?
Well, I think having a kid, but let's remember one thing too. We all were once kids ourselves, and I could just say, not just having kids, but being a kid myself, and just remember some of the challenges I had and had to deal with personally. Prevention may have been around, but I wasn't aware of it. And at times I wish I would have known about some of those resources that were available. As a parent, I can tell you, being in the field, my boys could tell you, even as college students, they could tell you every refusal skill that's out there. And it's so important. And that's not time to brag about the youth, but that's just a part right there for me to share the importance of having open dialogue. Whether it's a caregiver, whether it's a counselor, somebody at youth, for young people to seek people out. I think it's important that those misconceptions get debunked. As a youth, when I was growing up, I used to say, everybody's doing it. you know, boys will be boys, those type of things that, because that's what I heard and that's what I gravitated to as a young youth. And so that's what I saw. But beyond popular belief, there's more young people making healthy choices. And I think that's so important to shed light on that. And I didn't know that as a youth. I make it so important that my boys know. And like I said, I'll call them young men. They're still my boys, but as they're adults now, that they had those tools. They knew the refusal skills. They knew that if somebody chosen to go wrong, they could choose to go right. And the most important thing is have that type of dialogue. That's okay to have that discussion, to seek people out. I have this thing I say two things that I think adults need to understand, caregivers: the rehearsals, the commercial. What you see, these young people are watching you. What you see is what you do, and what you put out, they're watching you. And it's important that you know that. I also think it's important that we go back to the old African proverb, is that it takes a village to raise a child. I grew up believing each one teach one. One teach two, teach three, teach four, teach more. We are truly a community. And it's important that we share the information. And that's what I love about prevention, that we can share that with others so that can empower them and they can empower themselves and families. So one advice I would give is, like, caregivers with younger people in your life, younger people with older people in your life, identify who are the wise people to seek out, share with them, have that conversation, whether it's dealing with mental health issues, suicide, substance misuse, silence is noise, adults. And sometimes when youth aren't saying anything, they're saying a lot. Sometimes you may have to approach them with the conversation and ask particular questions, you know. And I don't believe I'm not talking about preaching. I'm talking about teaching and reaching, you know. I think it's important to have that dialogue, basically.
You know, these are great points, and empowering youth, especially with so many making healthy choices, is a great part of the job that you do. And thank you all for joining us today. Check out our website, ahealthyiowa.org, for more information, and keep your eye on MediaCom MC22 for our next episode of Surviving Bad, where we explore Iowa stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. I'm MediaCom MC22, your local programming leader.